As parents, few things are more frustrating than not being able to communicate with your child. And it's equally as frustrating for the child to not be able to communicate with their parents, peers, teachers, or in the case of apraxia of speech and speech delays, anyone at all. If your child's been diagnosed with apraxia of speech or some other form of a speech delay, or has not yet received a formal diagnosis, but you know that they're struggling to communicate clearly and effectively, this video is for you. It's especially for you if you've been doing the speech therapy and other forms of care for some time and you're just not seeing many results, you feel stuck, or you're even regressing. In this video today, we're going to teach you the 3 components or pieces and parts of speech, how they work together, how they get jammed up, and what you can do to help these 3 major components begin to work better in order to get your child's speech and communication back on track. When we take care of speech cases in our office, we almost always notice one major thing in common with these kiddos. Yes, they're struggling to communicate at varying levels of severity, but 9 times out of 10, these kids inevitably end up super frustrated when they aren't understood, and when they're faced with that frustration on a daily basis, it ends up creating frequent meltdowns and behavior struggles on top of it, and understandably so. But first, let's talk about the neurology behind speech challenges. Most importantly, the 3 components of speech formation must work in order and have no interference between them. The first important component of speech is perception or input, right? Before there can be integration and output later on, the sensory nervous system in the brain must first be able to receive that auditory information from the environment. Number 2, from there, the brain and the nervous system then process and integrate that information in the brain in order to make sense of it. And then, number 3, once the brain has received the information, properly processed and integrated it, then it must be able to create that output in action to actually formulate and express sounds into the words. So in our practice, the most commonly jammed up and interfered with functions are number 2 and number 3. That integration and the output, or more accurately even that neurological connection and the communication between the 2 functions. So if the signals between speech processing and speech formation, they're crossed up and interfered with, we term that subluxation here. The child will understand what's being said to them, what's going on around them in the environment, but they're not able to clearly articulate and communicate in response. Or, in the case of apraxia of speech, not be able to speak at all. So, parents, that may lead you to ask the question, what could be causing that jam up of the signals and communication for my child? And how do we get it fixed and cleared out? Okay, that's a big question, but we've got answers here. That's where neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic comes into play, and something called subluxation as well. So simply put, subluxation is a neurological interference or an interrupted communication between that sensory nervous system and the muscles that make speech happen within the body. Apraxia of speech and speech delays are perhaps the most obvious and easy to understand real-life examples of subluxation and nerve interference in kids. Because 1, they can do step 1, they can perceive the environment, and step 2, they can interpret and integrate the information in the brain, but then they get jammed up and cannot properly perform step number 3, the actual speech formation part. So our job as pediatric chiropractors is to find out if that subluxation is there, and if so, where exactly it is within the neurospinal system and how severe it is. And we can do that with our neurological insight scans. The most common trigger of subluxation that would interfere with speech function information is birth intervention and trauma. So things like forceps, vacuum extraction, C-section, which then lead to subluxation of the upper to mid-cervical and brainstem regions, where all 3 of those components of speech are controlled and coordinated. Parents, if this sounds like your child, please read the article below to learn even more about how chiropractic care can help. And if you're really ready to get some results, call us to schedule as a new patient and get those insight scans done. Let's get that information and find out if subluxation and nerve interference is what's holding your kiddo back from fully connecting and fully communicating. We've got you.